Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back. Always love when we get together with her and the insight that we get. And today we're going to look at a different part of her insight, the psychic ability. What's it like to be able to see things that other people don't see, to provide closure, clarity, answers for others? That's just a part of what she offers with spiritual coaching, energy healing, sound baths, Reiki, and so much more. She's back with us. Jamie Serrato's on the program. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve. It's great to see you again.
You too. You too. The psychic part of you, we never really got too deep into. And let's go broad for a moment. When you say psychic ability, how do you define that?
Um, I would agree with your definition. It's about being able to see things other people can't see, as well as hear things other people can't hear, but doing that in a controlled way, right? I used to be a psychiatric nurse. I met a lot of people who were hallucinating, right? But as a psychic, you have to learn how to remain grounded and be able to explore that world outside of the five senses while still being, connected to the earth and being grounded.
Do you ever test yourself?
All the time, yes. I went through a lot of training programs with my spirit guides in order for me to learn the difference between their direction and their guidance, or God's direction, or direction that comes from archangels, as opposed to just perceiving other people's thoughts, which early in my journey I struggled with, and I had a hard time telling the difference.
So I'm going to share something with you. And this is because we've said before that you feel that everybody has some kind of intuition, but some are more tuned into it than others. I've been working to get a little more tuned in, and I will test all the time. And situation last night, fun situation. I go somewhere with my best friend, known him since junior high, and we'll go to this local little pub, and they have specials during the week, and we meet like once a week and just catch up on everything. Well, they have a card that they pull out, and it's a new one for everybody. And you pick a number 1 to 5, and they open the window to reveal what your discount is going to be. So whenever we go and the bill is presented, but they say, all right, yeah, here's the card, pick a number and see what you're going to pay. I always close my eyes and I scan the numbers in my mind, 1 through 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I go back and forth until I find a number that I'm just getting stuck on. And just there it is again. There it is again. So I did it again last night. And this is, I've done it many times. And again last night, I saw a number. It was number 2. Number 2, please. Our bill was 10 cents. That was it.
Oh, wow.
We had 2 huge steaks. I can't make this up. French fries, onion rings, French onion soup, both of us, and 2 beers, 10 cents. So more times than not, I'm right. And it's not like there's a bunch of different, they don't want you to pay 10 cents. So in the cards, there's only one choice there. And maybe you
Yeah.
get half price. But I intentionally try to pick the right number from what I'm getting. Am I doing the right thing? Do you think I'm really using some kind of intuition to come up with this?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, our first thought, like the first idea we get, that's actually our intuition. Whereas, if you aren't sure, sometimes the mind will start going and going, and then the ideas are coming from your mind. But yeah, definitely, like your first thought usually is your intuition.
This one's more challenging because there's 5 different numbers. So it's not like choice A, choice B. Oh, I'm getting choice A. We're good. That's why I scan it in my mind and see it and go back and forth, up and down. And to be honest, went back to get something else to drink after all of this. And there was somebody in back of me. And I I just made a rash decision and I paid full price. because I didn't sit with it and I felt bad. Somebody's waiting for me, and I should have just said,
Mhm.
"I'll be 10 seconds, if you will," and so I can
Yeah.
really, quiet everything else and look. But I find it fun just testing, and even just would you say psychic ability is also partly intuition and gut feeling?
Yes. So there are people like me who have full-blown psychic ability, like we see everything. But then there's also intuition, and as you develop and you trust your intuition, those other abilities can be strengthened.
How do you strengthen? How do you suggest somebody strengthen their the psychic ability that they might have?
I mean, I would just start like a lot of my psychic ability has to do even with just objects, okay? Like, let's say I'm cleaning out a closet. I can look at objects and be like, oh, the energy on this is still fresh, it's new, I need to keep this object, right? And then other things that have been sitting in there for a while that I'm probably never going to use, they look different to me. Like they look old and dusty. And then I know, oh, I probably need to get rid of that. That's old and it doesn't look like it's going to be used again. And that's one way, just very simply in your everyday life, you can clean out a drawer and use your intuition and say, okay, do I probably need this or do I not really need this? And that's one way to strengthen your intuition.
I never thought of it that way. And using your intuition to make decisions like that, it just makes it easier. Just, I guess it's visualization is too, because you see it in a different, it could be a brand new object in your closet, but you're seeing it old and dusty, meaning get rid of it.
Right.
You're not going to use it. Get rid of it. Um,
Yeah.
what challenges did you go through when you realized you had psychic ability and you started using it? And I got to assume, people may have said, yeah, okay, really? Come on, Jamie. Um,
Yeah.
tell me.
The number one thing I faced was judgment. That was the number one thing. First, I had people who thought I was having a psychotic break, and I was, around the age where that can happen to people. And I did go and see healthcare professionals to make sure that that wasn't what was going on. But misdiagnosis is a real thing. I was on medication for a period of time because I was misdiagnosed, and people thought that I may have had schizophrenia. But I've been off medication for 2.5 years now, and I'm fine without it. So it was obviously a misdiagnosis, but people have a lot of fear. And if you allow other people to project that fear onto you, it can take over your life and you end up, in a very bad situation. So you're definitely going to face judgment from other people. People think you're making it up, especially when you're new at it. So every, vision you have, you may not interpret correctly, right? So people will say, "Oh, well, that vision didn't come true. Maybe this person is just in psychosis, right?" But it's definitely trials and tribulations. It's something you have to go through on the spiritual path to become strong in who you are.
What what type of things on a psychic level are you able to feel or see or tell?
I see a lot of colors. I see energy fields. So, for example, if there's a lot of abundance coming into my life at a certain time, I might see a lot of green energy. I usually see abundance is green for me. I will also see red. Red is, for me, it's either the heart chakra or the root chakra. It can also be anger or frustration can come through as red. Um, I see orange sometimes, orange for me, and everybody's different how they interpret what they see. But for me, orange is usually pretty negative. It's usually like a toxic masculine energy for me. And I see that around situations where there are abuse or a lot of lack. I can see orange. And I also see black. Black is usually negative attachments to people or very low vibrational energy, and I do see purple sometimes. Purple is usually divine feminine energy, intuition coming into the reality. I associate it with a third eye. And white is usually like pure masculine energy, like the divine masculine. I also see blue sometimes. So that can have different meanings. That usually has to do with masculine energy, but more in like a childlike state, like the inner child of a masculine energy will come through as blue for me.
How old were you when you started feeling that, I got something here. This is different.
Well, when I was young, I wasn't seeing colors, but I was very, very, very interested in spirituality. I was teaching myself how to lucid dream at like 10 or 11 years old. I would take out books at the library and learn whatever I could. Um, but it was in my late 20s when I began to get like the full blown, like everything turned on, and I had to learn how to integrate that.
I want to confirm, you said did I hear you say you were a nurse or you worked in a psychiatric facility?
Yep. Yeah. And it was during that time that these abilities turned on. So I was a psychiatric nurse taking care of patients going through psychiatric issues, meanwhile, trying to juggle my own life and my own abilities and differentiate between what my patients were going through and what I was going through. And it took a lot of faith and courage.
Wow. I had to make sure I heard you right because that's like a wild situation in terms of what you're dealing with, people in that scenario, and then putting into perspective what you've got, what you've dealt with, even before that. Wow, how interesting. Uh, um, when it comes to the psychic thing, are you able to connect to the other side, or is that a medium?
I've never really tried to be a medium, so to speak, but I've had mediumship experiences. I have a passed over loved one. He's here all the time, but I have a personal connection to him. So I have had experiences where loved ones wanted to get messages through to someone in particular, and they came to me. But it seems to be I can only connect if there's a reason. So a lot of times people just want to go and like knock on heaven's door and see what their grandpa has to say because they're curious. But grandpa is at peace, right? Grandpa, he went through his life review, he's resting, and he doesn't have any ties left to the earthly realm. If there's a situation where someone died traumatically and they need to get a message through, I can usually access that. But it's not like I can just call up anyone who died and get messages. It has to be spiritually guided, and there has to be like a reason.
Do you feel that when somebody passes on, their energy is still around? In the physical world, it's here. They're still here. Their energy is around.
Yeah, and you can have soul contracts with people who passed away. So, like in my situation, I have a soul contract with someone who passed away. So, yeah, he's here all the time, and we communicate all of the time. So yeah, their energy can definitely still be here if it's meant to, right? And if it's something that is helpful for your path, you can absolutely, have a relationship with someone who has already passed away.
Now we're doing a Zoom. Somebody you might be listening to this, but are you seeing any colors aside from what's around me? Around me?
Right now, no, but that's almost kind of intentional because I have to focus on this, right?
Gotcha.
So there was a time in my life where I couldn't control that. But for the most part, if I'm using I guess it's the left side of my brain, the part of my brain that has to problem solve, do conversations, figure out tasks, write a letter, make a phone call. If I'm in that part of my brain, the other side of my brain gets kind of quieter. But for the most part, if I'm not actively involved in using the left side of my brain, the creative side is more turned on. So I can kind of go into a meditative state and just start receiving information from the other side of my brain, And I'm in that state most of the time because it feels like connection to me. It feels like connection to source and to God. So I'm in that state most of the time.
I get it. It's as if let's say you're an Olympic runner and you're on a podcast. You're not thinking about Olympic running. Yeah, like that's you'd have to be in your zone on a track, warmed up and ready to go. That's not where
Mhm.
your mind is right now. And I would imagine it'd be the same thing. You're not focused on that. So it's hard to automatically just turn that on because you want to be uh, present as we are talking during the podcast. The the psychic ability, how much does that come into play when you do the energy work to help people? Like, for example, let's say you're doing spiritual coaching, or let's say a Reiki session or a sound healing.
Yeah.
How much comes into play with that?
So it just depends. I had a Reiki client the other day, and the only part where I really had to use my psychic ability was when I spoke. So before I started working on the client, there were words that were channeled through me to tell that client, like, you are safe in your body. We are going to practice anchoring that feeling of safety into your vessel. And that was all channeled. But for the rest of it, it was more an energy transfer. So it was more like I had to deep breathe during it, but I wasn't like having visions or anything. Now, if I have someone come to me specifically for a psychic reading, then I can, it can take me a moment. I have to tap in and I have to listen and all of that. But if someone is more working, if I'm working more with a conscious mind, it's more that it just naturally channels through me and less that I have to like go somewhere and access the information.
Does it freak you out ever?
Um, Not anymore.
Okay.
I will say, in the beginning when I was going through that stage of my life, learning how to be grounded, I had panic attacks. That was one of the reasons I was on medication, because I would get hit with these, sorry, I hit my microphone. I would get hit with these huge waves of energy and I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what was happening. So it was very scary in the beginning, but I was lucky because I had specific people placed around me who helped support me and help me get through some of those situations.
It must be unnerving to start seeing colors and all this stuff and then wonder, am I okay? Am I, I don't want to say, am I normal? Because what's normal? That's a relative term. We don't even know what normal is. But to wonder about yourself, um, I could see how that could be very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it was confusing because a lot of these activations I went through them by meeting people who were in my soul family. So I would get this really deep connection with someone I just met, and I would go home for the day, and I can still hear this person talking to me in my head. And I was like, what on earth? Like, I thought I was going crazy for sure. But what I realized is that that person was in my soul family. So we had such a deep bond that I was receiving all this information from possibly many incarnations I had with that person. So it was like my abilities were triggered by the frequency of love in a way because I was meeting people who I shared a deep love with from outside of this earthly incarnation. So yeah, it was confusing because I didn't know, like, oh, this person is going to think I'm crazy if I tell them that, I'm experiencing telepathy with them. So that was another thing, learning to release that shame that I had over these strong feelings and visions I would get, because a lot of them were associated with relationships, especially at first.
So you mentioned that somebody who you met was part of your soul family. How do you define what a soul family is?
So I've done some information about this on like my Instagram and stuff, but the way I see soul families, a soul family is like a tree, and the different souls are the different branches. So the trunk of the tree is the oversoul. That's like all of the souls combined. And then the branches are different souls that come and descend from the oversoul. And then the leaves on the branches are different lifetimes that we live. So someone who's a member of your soul family, they may be a real close connection. Like there's a branch here and a branch here, and we split off. But before that, we were one. We were one when we were the trunk of the tree. So meeting that person can be very activating, especially I guess that was the way I chose to have my awakening, was by meeting people who inspired a memory almost of who I was outside of this incarnation because I was close to that person.
when we meet somebody for the first time, are there no coincidences? That person was supposed to be in your life at that moment.
Yeah, I believe that there are no coincidences when we meet people, especially when we feel a strong connection.
I just even you right. You could be at a Starbucks and you see somebody and you're like, they just look familiar. I don't know what it is. I don't think I know who they are, but there's a weird knowing inside. Is that kind of what's going on there? There somehow you have a connection with them. Just don't know what it is.
Yes, absolutely. They could be a member of your soul family. We do, some of us have twin flames, but these tend to be, for the most part, these can be difficult relationships because when someone is a member of your soul family, they're a very strong mirror. So they will mirror back to you anything that you also need to heal or to work on.
Is that typically why they show up in your life?
Generally, yes.
Hmm.
I mean, we do have, weaker soulmates. I want to say weaker that we can have a more harmonious relationship with almost because they're less triggering to us. But people who are really close to us, we often meet, yes, for that purpose to look at the wounds we have and the parts of us that are hurting and to learn how to address them through the mirror of that other person.
When you meet somebody, do you think for a second? Do you process it? Why are they here? You're looking at it through a different lens.
Absolutely. And I'm a veteran now of these type of connections because I had so many soulmate connections in my 20s. So now if I meet someone, I'm 35 now, if I meet someone and I feel a strong soul connection, oftentimes the other person will get extremely emotional and like almost clingy. They want to be around me, but they don't really know why. But for me, I'm like taking a step back. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I can see we have a soul contract, but let's wait, let's be grounded, and let's see, what the purpose of this is and how we can approach this relationship in the most healthy way because I've had a lot of soulmate relationships that turned toxic, and then I had to grieve because I had to let go of people because I did not stop and think before I entered that relationship.
I believe many of us don't realize what you just said. And sometimes you're in a relationship, it's a friendship. And one day you turn and it could be a year, it could be 5, 10, whatever. You turn around, look at it, and you think, this is not really supporting me. I don't know what I was thinking. They're nice people, but it's not really working for me like it used to. Why do you think that realization comes up? Or is it just we're always growing and then we realize that doesn't work now. It worked then.
Yeah, I do believe that we're always growing, and especially, if you're on a spiritual path, you grow very quickly. And like a
Hmm.
snake sheds its
Hmm.
skin, you need to shed your skin every so often and pull in new experiences that are a better match for where you're vibrating at now, as opposed to at the beginning of that relationship.
Completely agree with you. And I don't claim to be psychic. I'm just saying I got more spiritual and more aware of this thing called energy and things just in life in general. And then I look at things differently, where prior to that, just going through life, maybe on autopilot, it's all good, but there was really nothing deep happening. Now I look at it in a different way and I'm not looking for anything, but I just evaluate it in a different way. I guess, like putting on a different pair of glasses. You're seeing things that you didn't see before, whether it was the type of relationship, the dynamics of it, life in general. It is kind of an eye opener.
Yeah, so I used to go into relationships unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
So I met this person, I'm gonna latch onto them because I'm afraid of being alone, or, I don't love myself, so I need this person to make me feel loved. And unfortunately, all those relationships that I got into from that level, they're gone now.
Yep.
And it's because I learned the lessons and all of that. But now when I enter relationships, I want to do it very consciously and I want there to be an agreed upon intention. This is why we're entering the relationship. This is in alignment with our life path and it's God's will. And then If it's God's will, then I'm happy to enter that relationship. But I'm no longer someone who just, goes to the bar and has a casual connection with someone. That's just not me anymore.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I guess it's just you run deeper once you have that realization. I don't know if it's a spiritual awakening because I don't know how to define that. I've had people tell me that they feel that they had one, and it was like a 1 year process, and it wasn't it didn't feel good, but when it was over, they were fine and things were wonderful. But
Mhm.
it's just, I guess, awareness, different type of awareness that you have.
Yeah, and it's also emotional maturity and emotional intelligence too.
I
You don't
totally agree.
have to be spiritual, to approach your relationships like that. But if you
Sure.
see relationships as sacred and you see yourself as sacred, then that's usually your approach.
And isn't it funny once you look at things in a different way, you know right away. Like if you meet somebody on whatever level it is, you know right away, or you have a real good feeling of, is this good? Is this not so good? Where's this going to go? Instead of being blind, it's a weird feeling. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely. And you can kind of tell almost, where is this person at on their journey, on their healing journey? Do they still have a lot of wounding, or are they able to, be an appropriate match, an appropriate partner for me? And you get better at discerning that
Yeah.
over time.
How do we connect with you on any of these levels, even if it's even for a psychic reading? How do we do that?
www.calmerwaterscoaching.com, or you can send me an email, jamie@calmerwaterscoaching.com.
And Jamie, by the way, is Jamie. Uh, I just love that name, Calmer Waters. Isn't that what we're looking for? That's peace to me.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.